Welcome to the Stephan Livera podcast, focused on Bitcoin and Austrian economics. Learn about the technology and economics of Bitcoin by listening to interviews with Bitcoin's best. Today, for episode 54, my guest is Justin Camarena, software developer at Bitrefill. Today, you'll learn a little bit about Justin's journey learning Bitcoin Lightning development and pioneering Bitrefill acceptance of Bitcoin via the Lightning Network, and also a bit about Lightning channel management. Also, for anyone interested, I interviewed Sergey Kotliar, CEO of Bitrefill, for episode 25 of this podcast. Here's my discussion with Justin. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hello. Happy to be on.
Yeah, so Justin, I've heard you've been doing a lot of cool stuff, and just for listeners, I've also previously interviewed Sergey Kotliar, also of Bitrefill, and I thought it would be really cool to talk to you, Justin, and get a sense on what your experience was like with starting out learning Lightning, and then what you guys are doing now with Bitrefill with things like Thor. But let's just get a little bit of background on you first, just for the listeners, Justin.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Camarena. I've been in Bitcoin not as early as most, but my first touch was in 2011. But I really started delving into the community in late 2013. It was around the time I was in college. So I actually switched my major from political science into computer science because of how much I was interested in Bitcoin. So in this, I sort of forayed into learning how to program to actually start building stuff around Bitcoin or with it. I think that's my intro.
Sure. Okay. And let's talk a bit about how you got started working with Lightning Network.
Right. So originally, I was very interested in the payment channel technology. There was a company called 21 previously that kind of got into this field. They provided a payment channel tech, a centralized version, but they basically started getting interest in the Bitcoin community in building APIs that utilized payment channels. Well, their scheme was sort of clunky in that the channels were time-based, and it only allowed you to send from one node to another node. It didn't have this sort of multi-hop or sending through the network. There was no network, so to speak. It was between two participants. So I first started getting interested in building APIs on this just because of how easy it was, and they built a library out of this. So with Lightning, when the paper was released in 2016, I was invited to an MIT cryptocurrency bootcamp in the middle of 2016, and there I met Taj. And at the time, I think they were building LND, but it wasn't at a state where it was running or many testers. So after that event, I sort of started becoming a tester and helping out with LND. And I was in university, and I wasn't working in any company at this point. So at that point, Lightning was very limited. The node software ran, but you were only able to send between two nodes. There were a lot of issues. So in my own way, I'm not a Go developer, but I thought I'd help out by testing out and finding issues, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a great example as well, where you don't necessarily have to be the developer yourself, but you can contribute by being a tester. So tell us a little bit about how you went about learning Lightning and then where you went from there.
So initially, it was just starting up a node, understanding all these moving parts. At the time, you would have to run a full Bitcoin node. I think that's sort of still the case now, but the API was really simple as it is now. Just learning how to create invoices, running the software. Let's see. And from there, just building applications on top of it. From there, I sort of got an interest from people on Twitter. I was active on this community, and my boss, Sergey Kotliar, reached out to me about interning at Bitrefill at this point in time. So that's how I sort of forayed into testing Lightning and sort of an intro point to a company and sort of being able to integrate Lightning into a Bitcoin-based company at this point.
Excellent. And then, so let's go a little bit further now. And then you were mentioning how, well, as most people know, Bitrefill were one of the pioneers with Lightning Network, both using it on the testnet and also on mainnet to actually sell the product. Tell us a little bit about your experiences there.
Yeah, so at Bitrefill, we were at the time just a mobile phone type of company. We've expanded to selling gift cards, but it was during the scaling debates and the increase of the free market. So it was at the time when transactions would cost $5 or $10. We were interested in pushing out anything that could help us accept payments while still in these times of high fees. So I was sort of the engineer behind integrating this into Bitrefill. And at the time, I had been working on moving away from using third-party APIs. I know that you had a podcast back with Bills and Francis, how they discussed how they went through like 10 different APIs accepting Bitcoin until moving on their own to accepting it through Cipher or using their own node. So initially, that was my first task at the company before getting hired, moving the company from using their own self-hosted node, and from there I was able to easily expand to add Lightning. At the time, this was only testnet, so I pushed it live, and we were able to have people on testnet pay orders that wouldn't fulfill or anything, but to try it out, so to speak. And at this time, there were no mobile wallets. It was more of a just command line. So the experience around building that, integrating that, wasn't really that difficult. It was mostly on the node setup, which would be spinning up a Bitcoin node. Well, fortunately for us, we already had a Bitcoin node up and running just for our orders already. So the difficulties in spinning up a LND node wasn't as difficult earlier as it was today. I think it's pretty similar right now. Basically just installing Go, setting up the configuration, but integrating into Bitrefill, the website itself, was pretty easy. It was like just a few API calls, being able to understand the paradigm of invoices. So instead of addresses, we would have invoices. It was pretty easy to integrate, in my opinion.
Sure. And just give the listeners a sense of the timing here. So my understanding is roughly late 2017, it was kind of fiddling around with testnet, and then sort of early 2018 was when you went mainnet.
Yeah, so early 2017, I've been testing out the software, so I was already familiar with it. Mid 2017, I actually already had a testnet integration, but at this point, the software was not as stable. It was crashing often. It was not something I could even push out for testnet. Mid 2017, the later end, that's when we started pushing testnet live for users to be able to test us. And I believe the end of 2017, we had a sort of a private beta users testing us live on mainnet. And in 2018 is when early 2018 was when we pushed it actually live.
Fascinating. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you faced as you were moving through that, well, I guess that procedure of starting with testnet people and then moving into mainnet?
I think at first it was just having the node be like stable. At the time, there were a lot of breaking changes, and the node would always crash for X or Y reason. The challenges there were sort of keeping it stable, being able to have it restart automatically. I mean, even today we have some sites that like they're not crashes, and they don't even have it implemented to restart on its own. Other challenges were sort of how to present this to the user, like as a separate currency, separate payment option. I think today we're sort of seeing many companies merge those options, so you can pay with Bitcoin on chain or Lightning. So that's been it wasn't really so much of a challenge for me to add. I would say integrating Bitcoin itself was a lot harder than integrating Lightning.
Right, I see. And what kind of setup were you working with back in the early days compared to what you're working with now?
I think early in the days there were a lot of APIs that weren't ready or weren't used. Like we couldn't set fee rates for channels. Sending wasn't really sort of a thought at the time. Nobody had sending transactions. There were no mobile wallets or any sort of setup to be able to pay mobile wallets at the time. So it was only people that ran servers at the time. But setup wise, it's still pretty similar to how it was back in the day. the main APIs for accepting Lightning haven't changed too much, at least for LND. So we use LND, which is one of the three main implementations currently in use.
Excellent. And I think the cool thing with this stuff is it's just a fascinating opportunity that doing Lightning Network and coding with Lightning Network has given you. So tell us a little bit about what you see there for opportunities for other people who might be considering taking up Lightning development.
So what I saw a couple of years back was many people wanted to get into Bitcoin development, but there were many barriers to entry. They had ideas of what they wanted to implement, but it wasn't really feasible doing this all on chain. Like what we're seeing now is more of all those possibilities that were not feasible before are sort of starting to become feasible with Lightning. And the development certainly is easier to get yourself up and running compared to Bitcoin. There are a host of other like APIs, node setup guides. There are boot camps and so all these kinds of things that help you and communities that sort of help you bootstrap a Lightning node and teach you how to use it and develop. Like we're seeing a much more dev-focused community at this point.
Right. And the cool thing there is, yeah, as you mentioned, there's a lot of cool guides and ways that make it easy. Have you got anything that you would recommend for listeners who are interested to try and learn further?
There's a Telegram channel called the Lightning Makers. LND has a Slack for Lightning. We have a dev channel there where we help new developers understand Lightning and understand the API, and if they need any help or ask questions, we help them there. I think there are several Bitcoin-focused classes, I believe. I think his last name is Moon.
Yep, Justin Moon.
Yeah,
Little boot camp.
I think there are a couple of others that I would recommend, like those. Maybe they can be linked in the chat. But
yeah, sure.
There are a lot of opportunities compared to what we had in 2013, 2014, I believe.
Fantastic. And now let's talk a little bit about Bitrefill. So one cool thing that we're moving into now, and I saw John Carvalho comment about this as well. He spoke about this idea of gearing up for the Lightning Network paradigm, as that just makes a lot more sense. So how are you guys thinking about this at Bitrefill?
We're basically trying to integrate Lightning in everything that we think possible. We're trying to expand services and sort of on-ramp users and earners into this system because we think that with Lightning, we'll have a more of a user base that will be able to cheaply be able to earn money and send money at this point. So the paradigm of expanding and helping push this, which is one of the reasons why we started accepting it early on when many others didn't think it was ready at this point. We thought if we show the world that we can accept Lightning and accept it well, and that users can use this to pay us, there's something to buy. We can sort of jumpstart this.
Excellent. And also, one really cool thing with Lightning is just that it helps smooth the customer experience in certain ways. So maybe you can comment on that. So one example might be if comparing back to the old Bitcoin only model, where if a service is provided by that company and then they put up the invoice, but then that customer might pay after the invoice has expired. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so with accepting orders with Lightning, it's a lot easier than with Bitcoin on chain or even any other altcoins from what I've seen. As a merchant, we have experience with all the different issues we had with accepting Bitcoin payments. One of them, of course, being expiration of an invoice. Usually a merchant wants a set time frame to be able to accept money because the rate of the Bitcoin rate may change so much or fluctuate where they may not want to accept it at that point. With Lightning, with the invoices, there's an expiration time built in so that if a user pays after a certain time, they're not able to pay the invoice. They just generate a new invoice. So from what we've seen is that it helps with the payment UX, user experience entirely. We also have had a lot of issues with users paying under the price, like partial orders or paying over the price. Or most of this is probably due to exchanges. Like if a user's using exchange, at times they subtract the fee from them not being sent out, which causes issues for merchants everywhere. I think That's one of the reasons BitPay has implemented BIP70. But I think, in my opinion, Lightning is a better fix or sort of an improvement to this. It's basically, other than some early bugs, we haven't had many payment issues accepting.
Excellent. Okay, so let's maybe go now into talking about Bitrefill's Thor service. So can you tell us, first of all, what it is?
Yes. So one of the biggest issues with Lightning would be off the bat being able to receive funds. So with Lightning, if you have funds, you're able to create channels to different participants, merchants, nodes. But at that point, you would only be able to pay people. We thought like early on, we sort of thought of a solution to this. One of my coworkers actually built Thor, and what Thor is that it provides sort of capacity or liquidity for users to be able to receive money over Lightning. So what we do is we open a channel of a certain capacity, a certain Bitcoin amount to your node, to your mobile wallet, and we make it easy to do so. So basically, you pay for the amount you want to receive. Say you want to have a channel open to you of 300,000 Satoshis, or even the max amount, 0.16 Bitcoin. So what we do is you would purchase this, there'd be a fee involved as we have to tie up funds, and it opens a channel to the node, to the user. So then at that point, when the channel is confirmed, they're able to receive money without having to spend from the channels they have. So if we opened a 0.16 Bitcoin channel, 0.16 Bitcoin channel to a user, they will be able to receive that much off the bat.
Right. And I suppose just to maybe help the listeners follow along if they're not as familiar with channel management, let's maybe talk through just an example. So let's say I open a channel to you, Justin, and I open that channel with, say, 5 million Satoshis or 0.05 BTC. Now, at that point, let's say I opened it to you. At that point, I have no incoming or inbound capacity. I only have, capacity to you. Once, let's say I have paid you, so let's say out of that 5 million, I made a payment for 1 million Satoshis. Only at that point now, I have incoming capacity, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I suppose what your service is doing then is giving people that incoming capacity without having to first spend.
Yes. So if you are a new user to Bitcoin, or even buying it with fiat, you wouldn't necessarily have Bitcoin to do this in the first place. And while you can receive after you've opened a channel and spent from it, we provide the service sort of so you can do this off the bat. So it's a really good example.
Fantastic. Okay. And so can you tell us a little bit about what the sort of fees are on this service?
So currently, it's a bit arbitrary, I would think. It's basically based on the fee rates to open and close a channel. And then there's the fee where we charge to lock up liquidity. Because us opening a channel to any person would mean we're locking up a sort of an amount of money that would only be available to them at that point. So I think for the lowest channel capacity, 300,000 Satoshis, we charge $1.50. And at the highest point, it's 0.16 Bitcoin, which is, I think, $20. Whether those are reasonable or not, we're always looking into changing the fee amounts. The bigger channels are mostly focused toward maybe a new merchant wants to come online. They don't have any inbound capacity, and say they want to be able to receive right away before launch. They could use us, and then over time, with interest, other nodes would open channels to them automatically.
I understand. And so is it just one upfront fee or any sort of ongoing to maintain the channel?
So it's a one upfront fee, but we sort of put a time limit. So 30 days now, we guarantee it'll be up. But after that point, we may close the channel. But in my opinion, I think we may just leave it open if there's activity in the channel, as we earn fees that are routed through that channel. But we're only guaranteed 30 days.
I see. And then what are the main, so we've sort of spoken about what are some of the main benefits for the users, but I suppose one example is you could have capacity to accept the Lightning Torch.
Yes, so from what we saw was many users are new to Lightning, or even if they were already using it, they didn't have the capacity to receive the Lightning torch. So early on, we saw more than a couple of users using our service just to be able to receive the torch and send it out. So that's one great use case.
Well, there you go. Okay. And now let's talk a little bit about potential improvements to that service of the Thor service. Can you talk a little bit about what might be coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, so we really want to focus on pushing out Lightning and sort of being able to have as much users as possible and for them to be able to earn and spend money. So one improvement we thought of was sort of implementing what this new scheme called turbo channels. So instead of just the channel being all our money pushed to a user, we can sort of sell a balance on that channel. So instead of selling Bitcoin. And this concept of a turbo channel would be the amount we push to you, you're able to use right away when the channel is still unconfirmed, if that makes sense.
Okay, so in this example, let's say we did something like, okay, Justin, you're selling me something for 1 million Satoshis, and I want to open a channel to you for 5 million Satoshis, and we would open, like say, I open that channel to you, it's a 5 million channel, but I push it to you with a 1 million balance on your side. Is that correct?
No, so it would be, we would sell a channel to you, and we would open a channel to you, and then we would push the amount of Bitcoin bought on your end.
Oh, so, sorry, it's the other way around. Got you. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So currently with Lightning, or the way Thor works right now is we don't push any amount out to the user because we don't sell Bitcoin in that channel yet. But in the future, we would support this sort of scheme where we can open a channel to you, push like $20, say if you bought $20 worth of Bitcoin, and you're immediately able to spend that $20 in that channel to anywhere on the network. So this
Excellent.
this would provide a way so you would be able to use Lightning instantly after buying it with, say, an altcoin or with cash or anything, but only from exchanges or sort of these brokerages.
Right. And what would be required to enable this concept of turbo channels? Would it require any sort of protocol level change, or is it more just something that can be implemented at an application level?
It's more of the great thing about Lightning is that all nodes do not need to be updated for sort of these sort of improvements to be made. It can sort of be the wallet and the node in question upgrading to support this. It would be like a policy. I mean, I think the current proposal is on the protocol level, but it would be something that would be optional. Something that if both nodes or wallets support it, they would be able to do it. So currently there's a proposal being proposed for this, and I believe Bitcoin Lightning Wallet has already implemented this, and Anton, the developer of this wallet, has a fork of Eclair with this functionality coming soon.
Fascinating. And I'm just wondering then, what are are there any other risks or trade-offs around this? Could that money get stolen?
Well, on the receiving side, they aren't really. They're trusting us that we're going to deliver the channel. So basically, Thor right now is sort of not trustless. It's sort of like buying a gift card or refill from us. You have to trust that we'll deliver the money. So in this case, there's no extra risk for the user to buy a turbo channel because when the money is unconfirmed and being pushed to them, there's no sort of incentive for them to cheat. Like, they're going to want to be able to push that money out. And for us, we are selling and fulfilling this order. So for us, we have a reputation, and we don't want to sort of double spend this or anything. But there is the risk of us double spending a user. But otherwise, you would just wait for a confirmation. You're not forced to use this feature.
Right, I see, yeah. So I suppose really it's the same risk as any with a double spend, that if I were to purchase something from you and I thought, that you were untrustworthy, well then I would just wait for the confirmation before relying on that balance to make a Lightning payment.
Right, but there would be no risk to you if you used it. Like if it would send, it'd be great for you. If not, then you would wait until confirmation.
Great. And then are there any other upcoming Lightning services that you want to talk about?
Right. So initially, Thor was just a test for us. We didn't think it'd get as much attention initially. We were maybe thinking maybe it'd be used for merchants, nodes that wanted capacity right away, or some users that were wanting to receive a lot more. But it sort of exceeded our expectations. We have sold a lot of channels, and we have a lot of other Lightning services in the works that I can't really talk about right now, but it should be coming out soon.
Fantastic. Okay. Let's now talk. I think I was quite fascinated about just channel management in general, and I was watching one of Alex Bosworth's talks from the Chain Code Labs residency, and I thought it'd be just interesting to talk to you about how, a couple of the things around channel management at Bitrefill. So, can you tell us a little bit about your experience on that?
Right. So I run Bitrefill is one of the biggest nodes on the network currently. As for balancing, I haven't really put much time or thought into balancing out channels. I have done manual work where I open channels to nodes previously that I would think would have routes that users would want to route to. So it was all done manually. I haven't scripted anything or I balance out channels because I think naturally other nodes are opening channels to us and sending payments to us. So we sort of already have a naturally occurring balancing for some channels. But one of the issues we had was having funds swept off because we don't necessarily want to close channels on a node or a user of us early on. So I think one of the biggest issues right now we're facing is sort of hoping that exchanges would adopt us. So maybe we'd be able to temporarily push out funds and balance at the same time. But I know there's work being done by Alex Bosworth to sort of automate this. We're having scripts that would do this on its own on the software level.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this concept of sweeping off and the need to sweep off?
Right. So right now we're still technically in beta, so we don't necessarily want to have too much money on our node. So I believe right now our node is 21 Bitcoin capacity. There's some utility sites that show the balance, but it doesn't really show the real balance. I think on 1ML it shows that we have 17.3, but our real capacity is like 21 Bitcoin. So around like a good chunk of that is balance we have tied up in a hot wallet. So one of the challenges is being able to sort of sweep some of that off so we can sell it for fiat or for our providers or sort of not have so much tied up online. One of the big reasons why we don't want to have so much money on a node is other than it being obviously a hot wallet, there's still work to be done on the node level to enable backups and safe recovery of funds. The current issue many nodes that are worried about is if our node crashes or for some reason we have some corruption issue, we may lose some funds on our node. So that's why we have a need to sort of sweep or close out channels that haven't been used in a while or a long time.
Right, and that's interesting as well because then there's a decision around when you want to try and reduce the capacity a little bit. Let's say it's gotten really big and you want to just try and take some of that out of a hot wallet into a cold wallet. You've got to decide which channel it is you want to keep. How do you decide? What are the factors around which channel to keep open and which ones to shut?
Right. So there have been a lot of visualizers or services that are popping up that show channel activity. I've sort of been doing it manually. In the future, I hope to automate this. I've been looking at channels that haven't been used often that have a big balance to us. So I manually have been closing those out. Or say one of the other big nodes has, say, 6 channels with us, and they have 3 of them are completely all on our side. I may close some of those out, but it's all been in manual at this point. But in the future, I hope to have something automatic, and I'm sure other nodes, or maybe not even have to close out channels in the future. I think in the future, with exchanges and more participants, we'll be able to just sort of push out funds over Lightning. That's the goal, at least. Or there's sort of a tech called spicing, so we may spice out funds instead of completely closing the channel out.
Excellent. And do you use any sort of dashboards to monitor the channels, or do you literally just use CLI character interface and just list your channels and pick from that?
There's one software that's called LN Dash. So LN Dash, I think one of the Slush employees or Trezor employees contributed, or somebody else made this. But I run that, and I can visually see everything. I also run Zap. So Zap's a really good wallet to have on the desktop and on the mobile phone, where I'm able to remotely connect to our server and visually see channels and close them out on my phone. So I don't necessarily need to do this on the command line, and I don't. Sometimes I do. It may depend.
Fascinating. And can we talk a little bit about whether you've faced any sort of, are there any kind of attacks or people trying to maybe use up your channel balance or execute some sort of funky attack on you using Lightning Network?
So one of the cool things with the Lightning Network is that if they try to use up our channels or sort of route, they're sort of paying us to do so. So there hasn't really been sort of a hacker or anything doing anything mischievous in this regard because they'd be paying us. And I think we sort of raised the channel fees for routing just a bit. So we're not at the default, but we're not too expensive either. That sort of helped in allowing nodes to sort of just pick another route, not through us, so we don't become the main central node on the network. We did see some attacks early on when we were in beta. I think there was sort of not really a hacker, but it's more of a script kiddie sort of trying to DDoS our nodes. But for the most part, it was really easy to sort of mitigate this on Linux and on servers. There's I think it's called IP tables. You sort of can limit connections or sort of mitigate this. So anything that we've had people have thrown at us, we sort of mitigated.
Fascinating. Okay. And let's talk a little bit about some of the guidelines that I saw Alex Bosworth mention. So he mentioned, now, in fairness, some of these guidelines might be more applicable to the individual who's playing at home as opposed to somebody who's setting up, let's say, a big routing node like yourself at Bitrefill. But he mentioned this idea of, don't make too many channels, don't make them too small, don't make them too large. And you want to assign more capacity to channels that get used and in the direction that they're being used. And you want to assign less to channels not being used. So how have you found those sort of guidelines?
So I think many of those we actually employ ourselves. Early on, we saw many people creating really small channels to nodes, and where the cost of closing that channel would sort of eat up half of the channel. So early on, we implemented a minimum channel. So LND has this configuration where you can sort of have a minimum channel needed or capacity needed to open to us directly. I've said that I think at the time was 0.001 Bitcoin. But nowadays, we have so many channels and inbound capacity to us where we don't really have much of an issue with capacity. I've actually increased the minimum limit to something like 0.15 Bitcoin because at this point we really don't need more channels. The only new channels that are really being opened at this point are big channels to us from other nodes that are interested in providing capacity to us, or our channels through Thor that are under that limit, so to speak.
Fantastic. And I think another comment that might be interesting to get your thoughts on is whether Bitrefill or any other large Bitcoin companies who are using Lightning Network, this idea of whether they should become a routing node or whether they should not.
Yeah, so in the future, I don't envision all merchants or exchanges being a routing node. We sort of did this in the beginning where we were a hybrid. We're a routing node and a merchant node and all these kinds of things, solely because of necessity. Like there was no way for us to get capacity or purchase capacity back then. So today I mean, at the time we had to sort of become a routing node just to be able to reliably accept payments. But in the future, I see sort of exchanges hiding behind other nodes and purchasing liquidity and not being on the network. So there's different views on this. Many think that merchants can be routing nodes or they shouldn't be. Depending on who you ask, the sort of the opinion changes there. But in our take, we've sort of become a hybrid. We're a routing node and public at this point.
Right. And also around just another idea around Lightning Network withdrawals, that some service providers say, oh, we'll do that for free for you if you want to do a withdrawal via Lightning Network, and we'll only charge you if you're doing an on-chain withdrawal with Bitcoin. can you talk a little bit about any risks potentially that can arise from that, potentially the fee siphoning attack or any other things around how you're thinking about Lightning Network withdrawals for customers?
Yeah, so early on, I saw that if you allow free withdrawals over Lightning, there's sort of an attack where you can sort of steal money from an exchange or a node by having two nodes and let's see, where you have two nodes and the route to that single node will go through another node that you own, and with the fees being increased, you can sort of attack an exchange that isn't charging for withdrawals, so to speak. So, in my opinion, withdrawals or any APIs should not be doing free Lightning withdrawals, or at least rate limiting it. For us, we've integrated withdrawals and deposits into Bitrefill accounts. So for withdrawal, we charge 5 Satoshis, which we may lower. But for Bitcoin withdrawals, we charge, I think, 1,000 Satoshis. So we want to make it cheap, but you can't have it for free. Otherwise, you have this attack vector that can be sort
exploited. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so how about the Lightning Network reference rate? So some of Nick Bhattia's work. Has there been much in terms of fee revenue coming in for Bitrefill? And now, obviously, I presume it's small, if any, but just curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, so we've actually made a lot more money from Thor, our channel opening service. It has way, the routing revenue so far now is way minuscule compared to what we've earned from Thor. But in our opinion, it doesn't really matter so much right now because we get a use case and we sort of benefit from having a node already without having to route. So in our opinion, having a node that doesn't make it enough in running fees doesn't really so much matter to us. But in comparison to when Lightning was in beta and even the past few months, we've actually seen an increased activity from fees earned. And maybe some of that is attributed to us having channels directly to customers or having that service. But we have seen an increase in fee revenue and events and this kind of area. And I think that may also be attributed to just how many different wallets we have and services integrating the centralized wallets we've seen from Lightning.
Right. And now I think those are most of the things I had around Bitrefill's channel management. Let's talk a little bit around, as you touched on there, some of the different Lightning wallets. Do you have any thoughts on just some of the different wallet, what are the different flavors available, and just your thoughts on which ones you might recommend for users, which ones are not so good?
Right. So in my opinion, I would rather use a self-hosted wallet where I am in control of my own funds. But I believe having the choice is also great. I know like every exchange that sort of implements or centralized service that integrates Lightning, they sort of in itself become a custodial wallet. But in my opinion, having more choices sort of benefits everyone. Centralized wallets are paying fees in routing fees. They are participating. It allows easy movement of funds between exchanges, between centralized entities. And it also allows you to sort of withdraw funds instantly from an exchange. Like say if you hold your own keys, you run your own wallet, you're able to withdraw money from an exchange instantly. You don't have the sort of necessity to leave it on an exchange. So one of the wallets I use, for example, is a Bitcoin Lightning wallet. It's a sort of a mixed case. All the keys are in your control, but and there's like a watchtower service around this. It's only on Android, but I think routing is the only centralized part. There's a central server that passes along the routes for you. But there are other wallets too that don't have this. I think Eclair is one example. They're only on Android as well, and everything is on the device: keys, routing, and so on. But they don't currently receive funds, so there's sort of trade-offs between all the different wallets. But I think in the long term, we'll see most wallets have sending and receiving. There's also another case of wallets where the centralized services, so there's custodial wallets. So we have Blue Wallet, we have Wallet of Satoshi, I'm not really so interested in those as much, but I do like that they're sort of onboarding users to use this wallet initially, and then they can sort of become interested in using sort of a wallet with that has control of their own keys. They can sort of jumpstart. Because I've been seeing a lot more interest in Lightning because of those with those wallets, and a lot of more fee revenue for our node because of those wallets. As an example, I give a Blue wallet. They are constantly opening big channels to us and quickly being depleted on our end. Like we've been getting so many users from them paying us, and I'm sure some of those users have sort of looked at Lightning and found just how great it is in paying, and maybe they're using their own wallet at this point, and maybe they became a Thor customer, or and so on and so on.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Obviously, I'm all in favor of the self-sovereign approach, running your own node, holding your own keys, etc. But we do have to be cognizant that there are many people out there. It's early days, and there are many people out there who are just not willing to go to the same level that, say, you or I are willing to go to. And especially as we start seeing Bitcoin and Lightning become used more online, let's say people like streamers who just use it to take payments while they're on their Twitch stream, they might not necessarily have the technical competence to go and set up in a more self-sovereign way, but hopefully they might start with something like a Blue wallet or a wallet of Satoshi, and then over time change to using more like a wallet where they are holding the keys and they are running the node underlying that Lightning wallet as well.
Right. So there's just different classes of users. I'm all for having the choice. I personally prefer the self-sovereign one, but I mean, we see people have run their own routing nodes and also are users of the network. We have people on mobile wallets, centralized wallets. I think I would prefer everyone would use their own self-sovereign wallet. But I mean, I can't force anyone to do so, and I think having the choice is at least a good thing.
Yeah, and the other interesting part is just with Bitcoin and Lightning, it's much more interoperable, right? So one piece of feedback I noticed on Twitter, JP Koenig made a comment saying, "Oh, well, what's the big deal about Twitter if they potentially put in Bitcoin and Lightning? Couldn't they have just done this years ago with their own in-game currency, to use the word?" And
Right.
the way I responded there was to say, actually, there's a slight difference here because Bitcoin and Lightning is interoperable. So if a person, let's say Twitter, someday down the line, puts in Lightning payments in the DMs or whatever, then users could now withdraw that out into their own Bitcoin Lightning wallet. And that's different
Right.
to having their own in-game currency.
Yeah, and at this point, it would be an instant withdrawal. They'd be able to sort of take liquidity out, or even move funds from another service that they may not trust as much into something else. Like it sort of allows the freedom, the flow of funds to be more instant between services and interoperable, which I find great.
Excellent. And now I suppose let's just finish up with a bit of talk around Lightning improvements that you're excited about. Are there any things coming down the pipeline or any other things you're excited for?
Like not Lightning itself, but I'm excited to sort of have people earning Bitcoin, sort of people creating services, sort of so that you can earn on Bitcoin and spend from it. So we have a lot of sort of marketplaces where you're able to spend Lightning at, but not so much where you can earn. There have been a few that I have been interested in. There was one. There was I think it was a Monero miner where you would CPU mine, and you would be able to withdraw satoshis into your wallet. So a centralized wallet would probably be easier to start off. Like you can sort of have a wallet run this service and withdraw a few satoshis, and then you can even try something sort of like YALs or something. Um, I'm excited about more use cases like around this earning. Hopefully, we can work on some in this area. There's also been marketplaces for earning in that regard as well. I think there was another one called Making Bitcoin. I forgot the name. It was they had Lightning support, which I thought was great. As for Lightning itself, the improvements I'm excited about, I think just sort of having like a node stability, being able to sort of have channel backups, not having to be worried about our node being corrupted and going offline and losing a lot of money. I'm excited about watchtowers. anything that makes it easier for us and safer for us to host a node with a lot of money in it. I think that would go a long ways in helping adoption with merchants. Um, Other improvements that I'm excited about personally as well is AMP. So being able to send money through multiple Lightning channels split up. I think that would help a lot with adoption and sort of help avoid a lot of the errors we see today with sending big amounts. So you may not need to pay Bitrefill to open a big channel just to receive the Lightning Torch, but you may be able to receive it through many channels. So those are just a few things I'm excited about, as well as turbo channels, maybe enabling that in the near future in that regard.
Yeah, fantastic. I love those comments. And I think just to touch on your comment earlier about adoption more broadly and people trying to earn in Bitcoin, and I think that's also a theme that came up in my interview with Sergey as well, actually. And I love that theme. I think because people are we are greedy and motivated to earn, and so one thing that I've noticed that's quite funny is oftentimes people got really excited by the whole idea of Lightning Network reference rate or earning, money from Lightning Network, even though in practice the routing fees are not that much. But
Right.
perhaps,
But I think
yeah,
I think in that regard, it's mostly because activity isn't as high yet. Like there isn't as much adoption yet. But I'm sure the rates, the fees would be a lot more significant if we say have tens of thousands of users. Even if with just that, we would have a lot more fees earned. So
yeah,
it
fee
may be
income.
viable in the future. Right now, it may not be. But maybe in the future.
Yeah, no, I agreed with you there. And I think it was just funny though, because I would notice how any sort of video talking about lightning fee revenue or any sort of content about that would have more views and more listeners and things, even though it wasn't necessarily a reality today. So I think, your comments there about helping people earn in Bitcoin are quite relevant.
Yeah. But I know there are some node operators that actually earn a lot more in fees. I know Alex Bosworth, he earns a multitude of more fees than I do. I think maybe that's due to him better balancing out channels or better strategic opening of channels liquidity to certain nodes. But there's a future definitely. I think like it's only becoming more and more promising. I'm seeing more traffic, more people pay with Lightning. I'm not sure if I mentioned it. I think we have more payments in Lightning than we do in altcoins in most days. I think at this point, it beats out Ethereum and Dash and all the other shitcoins at this point. It's like second only to Bitcoin on chain at this point, which
Yeah,
is great.
that's a great trend to see, and I think we're going to see more and more of it as the years go on. So, look, Justin, it's been fantastic talking with you. Justin, do you have any closing thoughts or parting thoughts for the listeners?
I think just I hope there are more people interested in Lightning and more companies and developers and users that start to get onboarded because it's exciting tech. I've been in this for a few years and it's amazing to see it finally taking off in some way at this point.
Excellent. And also, obviously, just tell the listeners where they can find you and where they can find Bitrefill.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, JUSCAMARENA, just Camarena. We also have a website. Bitrefill is also on Twitter, on Bitrefill, as Bitrefill the name. We're also available at bitrefill.com. We sell vouchers, gift cards, services like Lightning, and so on.
Excellent. I'll put those notes in the show notes. So, listeners, you can get the links for Justin and for Bitrefill there. Justin, look, I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and I trust that the listeners will find it interesting and educational as well, just to understand a little bit more about Lightning and channel management. So, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
So there you go, guys. Go and check out Justin and Bitrefill, which is a cool place to go and buy stuff with Bitcoin Lightning if you like. As usual, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you tell a friend about it and you retweet and share it on social media. That's it from me. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.